My name is Kelly Riley. I'm 27 years old. I recently graduated from the University of Kentucky with a fine arts degree. Life after college can be tough, but my story isn't just about growing up. It's about family, betrayal, and finding strength in hard times. My mom, Helen Riley, was my rock. She was a talented chef and a business owner. She wasn't just great at cooking, she was also a careful planner. She built her life with purpose, always making sure I was safe and taken care of. Even before she got sick with cancer, she planned for the future, both hers and mine. Her most treasured possession was the family bakery. She started it from nothing, pouring her heart into its success. When she passed away 5 years ago, she left it to me. She wanted me to have something to hold on to, a piece of her that would always stay with me. "Kelly, this bakery is more than just a business," she used to say. "It's our home, our roots. You will always have a place to call yours." Even while fighting cancer, she focused on preparing me for life without her. She taught me everything about running the bakery, from handling staff to working with suppliers. Her way of loving me was making sure I'd be ready, and I carry that with me every day. But life wasn't always easy. My parents were married for 11 years before it all fell apart. I was just a child when my dad, Larry Riley, left us for another woman. There were no big fights or court battles, just a quiet goodbye. He moved on quickly and married Janet, a younger woman who stepped into the role of wife and mother right away. Soon after, they had a daughter, Amy. I visited sometimes, but I never really felt like I belonged. I never really felt like I belonged in their new family. Janet was always polite but distant. She treated me more like a guest than part of the household. "Kelly, would you like to stay for dinner?" she would ask, but her tone made it clear she hoped I'd say no. My dad was always busy with work. He said he needed to provide for his family, but most of the time, it felt like I wasn't part of that family. My half-sister, Amy, was 11 years younger and the center of their world. Janet adored her, braiding her hair, cheering for her every small achievement. It was hard not to feel like an outsider. Even so, my relationship with my dad remained polite but distant. He paid for my college tuition all at once, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of duty. It was his way of helping without actually being there. I didn't question it. At the time, I thought it was the best I could get. I had no idea that my mother's careful planning and my father's hidden motives would lead to a storm I never saw coming. Losing my mother was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Helen Riley wasn't just my mom. She was my biggest supporter, the person who made me believe I could do anything. When she passed away from cancer 5 years ago, just weeks before I was supposed to leave for college, my whole world fell apart. The grief was unbearable. It felt like a part of me was missing. For weeks, I could barely get out of bed. I was numb, unable to believe she was really gone. That's when my father, Larry Riley, did something unexpected. He, Janet, and Amy moved into our house temporarily to support me. At the time, I was too overwhelmed to question it. I was just grateful to have people around, even if our relationship had always been strained. "We're here for you, Kelly," my dad said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Janet nodded, her expression carefully sympathetic. Even Amy was unusually kind, though I noticed her eyes wandering around the house, taking in every detail like she was visiting a museum. At first, having them there felt like a small relief. Janet handled meals and kept the house in order. Dad helped with the endless paperwork that comes with losing a loved one. Amy would sit with me, chatting about school and her friends, giving me small moments of distraction from my pain. It felt strange, but in those moments, almost comforting. As summer ended and my college start date got closer, I had no idea how much things were about to change. I had a tough choice to make. What to do with the house. Selling it was out of the question. It was my mother's legacy, the home she worked so hard to keep for us. But leaving it empty for 5 years didn't seem like a good idea either. That's when my dad made a suggestion. "Kelly," he said one morning over coffee, "why don't we stay here while you're at school? We'll take care of the bills, keep up the house, and you won't have to worry about anything." Janet, flipping pancakes at the stove, added, "It would be good for everyone." Amy loves her school here, and the house will be in great hands. At the time, it seemed like the best solution. I agreed, thankful for their help, and left for college believing my mother's home and her memory would be safe. College was a whirlwind of classes, assignments, and late-night study sessions. But coming home during breaks always felt like stepping into another world. At first, it was just a familiar place to return to, but over time, I noticed something surprising. The family dynamic in my mother's house was changing. When I came home for my first break, Janet greeted me with a warm smile and a home-cooked meal. "Welcome back, Kelly. I made lasagna, your favorite," she said, setting the table as if she'd always known what I liked. Amy, my half-sister, was excited to show me her latest artwork. "Look, Kelly, do you think I should add more blue here?" she asked, her excitement contagious. For the first time, she treated me like a real sister, not just someone who visited occasionally. As the years went by, my visits home became more than just a chance to rest. They started to feel like I was part of something bigger. During Christmas, we decorated the tree together, playfully arguing over ornaments. "Tinsel is so tacky," Janet would say. I'd laugh and insist, "No, it's classics." Dad would lift Amy up to place the star on top, smiling like this was the family he had always dreamed of. Those moments felt real, warm, almost like we were truly a family. Summer breaks were even more relaxed. Amy and I spent lazy afternoons at the community pool or binge-watched movies with bowls of popcorn. Janet even invited me to her book club, where we talk about romance novels and laugh at the plot twists. "Kelly always has the best insights," Janet told her friends one evening. For the first time, I felt truly included. Even my dad seemed different. He wasn't as distant as before. He joined us for dinners and asked about my classes, really listening to what I had to say. "Your mom would be so proud of you," he told me one evening, his voice full of emotion. Moments like that made me feel like I wasn't just a visitor, I was part of the family. Over time, I started to see Janet and Amy in a new way. Janet, who once felt distant, became almost motherly. She always checked in on me, asked about my life, and made sure I felt at home. Amy's energy and constant talking filled the house with life. She looked up to me, asking for advice, making me feel like a real older sister for the first time. Even the house changed a little with each visit. Janet added small touches, a new set of curtains, a carefully placed centerpiece on the dining table. But everything still fit with the warmth my mom had created. It felt like we were all building something together, keeping the past alive while moving forward. By the time I graduated, I truly believed we had become a family. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. I never imagined how fragile it all was, how quickly it could fall apart under the weight of hidden secrets. Graduating from college felt like the start of a new life. After 5 years of studying, late-night cramming, and dreaming about the future, I finally had my degree. I had landed a job back in my hometown, and the idea of returning to the house I grew up in filled me with comfort and excitement. My mother's house, my house, was waiting for me, a place where I could settle down and start my career. The day I arrived home, the sun was shining, and the air felt warm and full of promise. As the taxi pulled up to the driveway, I smiled at the familiar sight of the house. The garden looked well cared for, though the roses my mom had planted looked a little different from how she used to tend them. The house felt the same, yet subtly changed by Janet's small updates, new curtains, a fresh coat of paint on the shutters. It still looked welcoming. I couldn't wait to step inside and reclaim my room. Dragging my suitcases up the walkway, I reached for my keys, eager to walk into the home that had always been my safe place. I slid the key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again, jiggling it slightly. Still nothing. Confused, I tried once more. The door wouldn't open. I muttered to myself, "What the hell?" and knocked hard on the door. This had to be a mistake. Maybe they changed the lock and forgot to give me a new key. After a moment, the door opened, and Janet stood there. Her expression shifted quickly from surprise to discomfort. She was wearing an apron dusted with flour, like she had been baking. "Kelly," she said hesitantly, "what are you doing here?" I rolled my suitcase inside, ignoring the awkward tone in her voice. What do you mean? I live here, I said, looking around the living room. It felt different. The furniture was rearranged. A new rug. Small changes, but enough to feel unfamiliar. Why were the locks changed? I asked. Before Janet could answer, Dad walked in from the living room. His face was pale, and he moved stiffly. Amy followed behind him, looking nervous, but staying quiet. Kelly, Dad started, rubbing the back of his neck, a sure sign he was uncomfortable. Let's talk in the office for a minute. A bad feeling settled in my stomach as I followed him into my mom's old office. Her books and certificates still lined the walls, but the air felt heavy, like even the room knew what was coming. Dad shut the door behind us and turned to face me. His hands were shaking slightly. Kelly, he said in a low voice. There's something I need to tell you. He paused, struggling with the words. Janet thinks this house belongs to me. I blinked, not understanding. What are you talking about? Mom left this house to me. It's in her will. He nodded but wouldn't meet my eyes. I know. But when we moved in, I told Janet it was mine. That I had given it to your mom out of kindness after the divorce, and when she passed, it came back to me. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the stomach. You lied to her? For 5 years? You let her believe this was your house? And now you're saying she doesn't even know it belongs to me? Dad's shoulders slumped. I didn't think it would matter, he muttered. You were at college and we needed a place to stay. I thought it would be temporary. Anger and disbelief surged through me. Temporary? This is my house, Dad. Mom's house. And you're telling me you've been living here, letting Janet act like it's hers, while lying to both of us? I was going to tell her the truth, he said weakly, but it didn't sound convincing. Just give me some time to figure out how to handle this. I shook my head, my anger boiling over. You've already had 5 years, Dad. At that moment, Janet knocked on the door, her voice sharp. Is everything okay in there? The air was thick with tension, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. I wasn't going to let them keep up this act. The first few days back in the house were uncomfortable, but I told myself things would get better. After my argument with Dad, I decided to stay quiet for now, hoping he would fix things like he promised. But almost right away, things in the house changed. Janet's attitude shifted, and it wasn't long before she started acting differently toward me. At first, it was little things, comments that sounded nice but had a hidden edge. Kelly, I reorganized the pantry to make it more efficient. You probably didn't notice, since you've been so busy with college, she'd say with an overly sweet smile. Then came the accidents. One morning, I found my favorite blouse in the laundry, ruined with bright pink stains. Oh dear, Janet said when I asked her about it, her voice full of fake concern. I must have mixed up the laundry baskets. These things happen when a house gets too crowded. Even Amy, who used to be excited to spend time with me, started acting cold. She rolled her eyes when I walked into the room and referred to me as that girl when talking on the phone with her friends. One evening, I overheard her whispering, Mom says it's weird you're still here. The words hurt more than I expected. Janet's passive-aggressive behavior soon became more direct. One evening, as I poured myself a cup of coffee, she cornered me in the kitchen, arms crossed, her expression cold. Kelly, have you thought about getting your own place? She asked, her tone light, but her words sharp. You're starting a new job soon. It's time to think about living on your own. You're a grown woman, after all. I gripped my coffee mug, forcing myself to stay calm. Actually, I've talked to Dad about staying here for a while. He's fine with it, I said. Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a second, I thought she might argue. But instead, she turned and walked away without another word. The next morning, I woke up to find the living room rearranged. My mother's favorite vase had been moved to a dusty corner. It didn't match the new aesthetic, Janet said when I asked her about it. My frustration grew, but I bit my tongue. I knew arguing wouldn't change anything. The tension in the house was unbearable, and Janet made it very clear she wanted me gone. I wasn't welcome. Amy followed her mother's lead, treating me with disrespect. Even Dad, who had always been my safe place, seemed distant. He avoided eye contact and started leaving the house early in the morning, always saying he had work. I felt like a stranger in my own home. Family dinners became tense and uncomfortable. Janet made just enough food for 4 people, then acted surprised when I sat at the table. "Oh, I didn't think you'd be here for dinner," she'd say with a fake smile, but her eyes were cold. Amy would giggle at her mother's words, and Dad would sit silently, refusing to get involved. Day by day, the isolation wore me down. I spent more time in my room, avoiding the cold stares and snide remarks. But even there, I couldn't escape the heavy feeling of betrayal. This wasn't just about Janet anymore. It was about my father, the man who stood by and let it happen. I threw myself into my new job and tried to reconnect with old friends, hoping to distract myself. But no matter what I did, the tension at home lingered. Every day, it felt like I was being slowly pushed out of my own life. Then came Thursday morning. The house was unusually quiet. No sound of Janet baking in the kitchen. No music from Amy's room. No sports murmuring from the TV, where Dad usually sat. The silence felt eerie, like the house itself was holding its breath. I got out of bed and walked downstairs. "Hello, Janet?"
"Dad."
I called out. No answer. The kitchen was spotless. Not just clean, but untouched, like no one had been there since the night before. The living room looked too perfect, with the throw pillows neatly arranged on the couch. Even the usual clutter, Amy's shoes, Janet's handbag, was gone. I glanced outside. Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. Confused, I checked my phone, expecting a message or a note explaining where they were. Nothing. I called Dad's number. It went straight to voicemail. Frowning, I tried again. No answer. Reluctantly, I called Janet. She picked up on the 5th ring. Her voice was sharp and impatient. "What do you want, Kelly?" she snapped. In the background, I heard the sound of waves and tropical music. "I just wanted to know where everyone is," I said, surprised by Janet's harsh tone. I woke up and the house was empty. She laughed, a sharp, cruel laugh. "Oh, didn't we tell you? We're in the New Caledonia. First-class flights, luxury resort, the works." Her voice dripped with mockery. "We didn't mention it because, honestly, we didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you."
"What?"
I stammered, shock and anger mixing in my chest. "Janet, what are you talking about? You left without saying anything." "Save it," she snapped. "I'm done with this whole situation. You're nothing but a freeloader living in our house, mooching off us like you own the place. Your father might tolerate it, but I won't. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a grown woman squatting in her home?" Her words felt like a slap. But she wasn't done. "When we get back, I want you gone. Pack your things and leave, Kelly. And don't think you can guilt your father into letting you stay. He agrees with me. He's just too spineless to tell you himself. We've already blocked your number. Have a nice life." The line went dead before I could even respond. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping my phone, her cruel words echoing in my head. The betrayal hit me like a tidal wave. Then something inside me snapped. The sadness, the disbelief, it all melted away. Pure, focused anger took its place. This was my house. My mother's house. And I was done playing nice. I spent the rest of the day packing their belongings. Janet's designer clothes, Amy's school supplies, Dad's golf clubs. Everything. I stacked the boxes neatly in the garage, making sure there wasn't a single trace of them left inside. Every move felt like taking back a part of myself. By evening, I called a locksmith. "Can you change the locks immediately?" I asked, my voice steady. He arrived within the hour, replacing every lock in the house while I stood by, gripping the new keys like a lifeline. It cost a small fortune, but I didn't care. When I closed the door behind him, I exhaled. This was my house again.
And no one was going to take it from me.
Sunday evening. I pulled into the driveway after a long day at work, and there they were. Their car was parked outside. Janet, Dad, and Amy stood near the front steps, surrounded by their boxes and suitcases from the garage. Janet's face was red with rage, her hands waving wildly as she spoke to Dad. Amy stood back, scowling. Dad wore his usual look of quiet discomfort. And as soon as they saw me, the real fight began. I stepped out of my car. Janet's voice exploded. "How dare you change the locks?" she screamed, storming toward me. "This is our house. You have no right to lock us out." I ignored her shouting and walked past them, heading straight for the front door. Janet followed, her voice getting louder with every step. "This is illegal. We're calling the police. You think you can just throw us out like we're nothings?" I stopped at the door and turned to face her. Something inside me felt calm, steady, even, as her words came at me like poison. "No, Janet," I said firmly. "This isn't your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother left it to me in her will. The only reason you've been living here is because I allowed it. And now I'm done." Her face twisted in shock. She spun toward Dad, who stood frozen by the car. "Larry, tell her she's lying. Tell her this is our house," she demanded, her voice sharp. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He shifted uncomfortably, then finally mumbled, "She's telling the truth." Janet's anger exploded. "You lied to me?" she shrieked, glaring at him. "You let me believe this was your house, that you were doing her a favor by letting her stay? What else haven't you told me?" She turned back to me, her expression shifting from rage to fake sweetness. "Kelly, sweetheart," she cooed, her voice suddenly soft. "We've had so many good times here, holiday dinners, book club nights. This is a family home. Surely we can work something out." "No," I said, cutting her off. "We can't. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave." Her fake kindness crumbled. "You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You'd throw your own family out on the streets." "You've never treated me like family," I said, my voice steady. "And don't pretend this is about loyalty. You tried to steal my house, Janet."
My mother's house.
Dad finally stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Kelly, please. I know I've made mistakes, but we're family. We can work this out. Just let us stay a little longer." I shook my head. My voice was firm.
"No, Dad."
"You lied to her, and you lied to me. You let her erase every trace of Mom from this house while you stood by and said nothing. I won't let you keep doing this." Janet's face twisted with desperation. "You can't do this. We'll fight you on this, Kelly." I opened the door and stepped inside, turning back one last time. "You're welcome to try," I said simply. Then I closed the door firmly behind me. Through the window, I watched them realize it was over. I watched as they packed the last of their things into the car. Janet screamed. Amy cried. Dad just looked defeated. As the car pulled away, I felt something lift from my chest. The house was mine again, truly mine. In the days after they left, the house felt strangely quiet. But instead of feeling lonely, I felt at peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells or bracing for Janet's rude comments. The space was mine again. And with it came a clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just my mother's house anymore. It was my sanctuary, my chance to start fresh. Cutting ties with my father and his family wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Dad tried to reach out a few times, calling from different numbers and leaving voicemails full of apologies and promises. I didn't answer. His words felt empty after everything he had allowed to happen. "I love you, Kelly," he said in one message. I was just trying to keep the peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace at all. And I wasn't going to compromise my dignity just to make him comfortable. Janet never bothered to contact me. She had made her feelings clear. Amy's silence hurt more than I expected, but I reminded myself, she was just a kid, caught in the middle of her parents' choices. Even so, I knew it was better to let go of the toxic relationships that had weighed me down for so long. With them gone, I focused on rebuilding my life. The first step was reclaiming the house, not just physically but emotionally. I moved the furniture back the way my mom had arranged it. I repainted the walls in warm, soft colors that reminded me of her. I replanted the roses in the garden, choosing the same colors she had loved. Every small change felt like I was honoring her memory while making the space my own. Work became my anchor. My job at Marshall and Brooks Financial was challenging but fulfilling. I threw myself into it, and over time, my colleagues became friends. Laura from the risk assessment team became a close confidant. Our lunch breaks were filled with laughter and talks about future plans. But the most meaningful project was restoring my mother's bakery. It had been closed since she passed. It took months of planning and late nights, but eventually, the doors reopened. I stood behind the counter, breathing in the warm scent of fresh bread and pastries. A wave of pride washed over me. The bakery wasn't just a business, it was her legacy. And now, it was mine to carry forward. In quiet moments, I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the loss of people I once called family. But I didn't let bitterness consume me. Instead, I saw it as a chapter in my story, one that taught me the importance of boundaries, self-respect, and the strength to start over. Healing isn't easy. It isn't a straight path. But as I stood in my mother's house, surrounded by the life I was building, I felt something I hadn't in years.
Hope.
My mother always believed in planning for the future. Now I understood why. She had given me everything I needed to stand on my own, even when the people I trusted let me down. As I looked out at the garden, the roses blooming in the soft evening light, I knew I was ready to move forward. This house, this life, it was mine. And I would build it into something beautiful, for her, for myself, and for the future she always wanted me to have.